Hey everyone, I'm Erica, and today I'm going to do a little short tutorial on crow pose. Crow pose is one of those poses that is it's one of the basic arm balances, and it's really fun to do when you can get it, but sometimes it's really hard to get it. And a lot of classes that I've seen online or in person, the teacher just instructs how to get into the pose, but if you can't get into it, it's not always helpful to know those basic alignments. Sometimes you need some like alignments, if that makes sense. So I'm going to show you a few exercises to give you some of the feeling of the lightness of crow pose, because you need to be really light and lifting everything up off the ground, and also a strengthening exercise, and then a couple of different ways to get into it. So I hope that they will help you attain your first crow pose if you've never been able to get into it, or if you can get into it but you would like to work on it a little bit to get some of the strength, refine it a little bit, then this video is for you. And I'm going to be doing another one next, an intermediate one that's for once you're more comfortable with crow pose, some of the things you can do with it, because it's lots of fun once you can get into it. Okay, so to start, we're just going to come to hands and knees, regular tabletop position, wrists under the shoulders, knee under the hips, and then make sure your middle finger is pointing straight forward and your other fingers are spread wide, like you're trying to get as much space there as possible. I always think of Ironman hands, really strong, active hands. They spread fingers, and that gives you a really wide base, a nice, great foundation. So coming to neutral tabletop, so not dropping the ribs, but keeping everything tucked in nice and close and really taking the navel up towards the spine. And then the useful part here for what we're doing today, crow pose, is to push the floor away, come into your cat pose, let the head be heavy, and then take the navel up towards the spine and really focus on drawing everything in. So you're trying to bring the bottom ribs down towards the top of the pelvis, and the pelvis up towards the bottom ribs. Take the navel way up towards the spine, and you can see how much lift there is in the spine here, how much you're coming away from the floor. And your hands should be really light. They're pushing into the floor, but they're so light because you're drawing everything up that you could really easily lift your hands, your palms up off the floor. And that's a nice practice to see how easy it is to lift the palms up. So pushing the floor away, letting the head be heavy, taking the navel up to the spine. And then while we're here, we'll just let the belly fall, pull the heart forward, try to draw your hands back towards your knees, take your shoulders back towards your hips, and then again push the floor away, lift up, feel that lightness, even lift the palms if you can, and then come back to center, keeping the navel drawn up towards the spine. We are going to we'll have some options with the block and the strap shortly, but for now we're going to come into plank pose. So again, having the hands really wide, the fingers spread wide, the middle finger pointing straight forward, wrist creases parallel to the front of the mat. And the hips are in line between the shoulders and the heels. And then push back to down dog, lift up the right leg, and then we're going to slide forward, bend the knee in towards the nose. Again, push the floor away just like we did in the cow, or in the cat curl, cat back, lifting the nose and the heel up towards the hip. Try to bring your nose right in towards your knee. Draw your knee right up towards your nose, and then lengthen back into three-legged dog. And then we're going to bend the right knee and bring it out to the side, to the right elbow, as high up as you can, lifting the foot up. You can see on my back foot, my toes, I'm just barely on two toes. And again, I'm pushing the floor away, lifting everything up, just like that angry cat back. The leg lifts. Then we're going to go across to the opposite elbow. Try to touch as high as you can. Keep your heel up as high as you can. Push the floor away. Come back to center. We'll do those one more time. So center, lift, exhale, right elbow. Inhale, lift. Exhale, left elbow, twisting. Inhale, lift, and then bring that leg down. Take a breath here. And then coming to the left leg, so the weight comes into your right leg, lift your left leg up, come to center first, bring the knee to the nose to the knee, inhale, lengthen back, come to the left elbow, pushing the floor away, lifting the shin up, inhale back, then across to the right elbow, inhale back, one more set, coming into center, inhale, lift, exhale. elbow. Inhale, lift, and exhale to the right elbow. Inhale, lift, and then lower down. Bring the knees down to the floor. So those are really good strengtheners. You're probably noticing that now if you just did it. Really great practice, and you can see, especially with the knee coming to the same elbow, that is half of crow pose. So we just have to get from there to here, and we're going to do that two ways. First way, we're going to use our block. So bringing the block, I'll show you from the front first. Come to stand on your block with your big toes touching, and then come into a squat. Bring your knees wide so the arms can come in between your knees. You want your knees to be as high up on the arms as possible and squeezing into center. Your hands, again, are going to be Iron Man hands, middle finger pointing straight forward. The bigger the base here, the better. Then you're going to come forward so that the elbows come over the wrists. Keep the elbows squeezed in. Keep the knees squeezing in. The knee against the elbow, or the knee against the upper arm, is your other foundation. Your hands are foundation, and then squeezing the knees into the arms is the other foundation. You want your hips up nice and high. So that's from the front, the setup. And once you have all that, then you look forward. Always look forward, don't look down. This pose is more about moving forward than down, and if you look down, you're probably going to go down, and we don't want you to go down. We want you to go forward. Set up the hands, bend the elbows, bring the elbows so they're above the wrists, and then lift one foot up, just point the toe back, lower down. See if you can push the floor away with the hands, lift up, take the navel up to the spine, lift the other toe, put it down. Try that a couple of times. So again, you're halfway there, more than halfway there this time. And then see if you can bring both feet up at once. So the fingers spread wide, the wrists are at shoulder distance, elbows bend, the elbows come above the wrists, the knees come nice and high, the hips come nice and high. Lift one foot up, squeeze your knees into your arms, and maybe you can lift your other foot up. Take the shoulders away from the ears, push the floor away, lift up through the navel, and then nice and slowly lower back down. So having the block, it gives you some height. You don't have to come as high up, and you're already, once you're here, you're already there. It's just a matter of, and mostly it's a matter of strength, of being able to lift those feet up. So that's one really great way to practice. Another way from the floor is to do a rocking motion so that it gives your body the sense of how it feels without the block and without the help, but going bit by bit so that it starts to build the muscle memory. So we'll start the same way that we started on the block. Big toes together, come into a squat with the heels up. Bring your knees wide, your elbows come, your arms come inside. Set your wrists up at shoulder distance, middle finger points straight forward, fingers are nice and wide. You can see how high my knees are already on my arms. So you really want to get them up as high as you can towards the armpit. Your hips lift up. Squeeze your knees into your arms and squeeze your arms back into your knees. And then just start to rock forward and back. Really gentle rocking, coming up onto your toes, coming up onto the very tips of one toe. And then eventually, as you squeeze your knees into your arms, you might lift off the ground for a second, for half a second, and then come back. So this takes a lot of the fear out of it, doing this little seesaw motion. And then eventually, you'll be able to come up, hold it, maybe even for just half a second, and bring your toes together. Another thing that I've seen sometimes in class is that people's elbows come way out to the side. And when you do that, even when I'm doing it, it's hard to keep the pressure on the inner side of the palm of the fingers. And also, the joints are not in a good place for joint stacking, and we can work on that, improve that. So if that is the case, if you notice that your elbows are coming out, or you just feel like you don't have the strength to keep your arms really strong, a strap can be really handy. So create a loop that's the size of your shoulders. It's kind of like from the middle of the shoulder to the middle of the shoulder. Bring it around the arms. Have the buckle facing away from you. And you want the strap just above your elbows. That might be really in the way when you're starting out this pose, because a lot of people can't get their knees up as high and their knees are still close down. So try to bring your knees above the strap if you can. Set up your hands the same way, middle fingers pointing straight forward, fingers spread wide. If the strap is really in the way, you can bring it below the elbow. Otherwise, walk your knees up. And I lift my hips up. You can see how high my heels are already. Hips are high, heels are high, coming up onto the toes. Set up the fingers shoulder distance. Squeeze the knees into the arms. Bring your shoulders, or bring your elbows forward so they're over the knees, or over the wrists. That's another thing I've seen is people trying to come into crow from way back here with their elbows way back behind the wrists. So bring your elbows forward so they're over the wrists. Your knees are squeezing into your arms, and then with the strap you can even push out into the strap and it'll give you a bit more strength. So squeezing the knees into the arm, keeping the elbows bent, and then your elbows, your upper arm bones act as a little shelf. So that's the help with the strap. And then eventually you can do it without those, however long that eventually means for you, for your body. Setting up middle fingers pointing straight forward, fingers spread wide, shoulder distance. Walking your knees up towards your elbows as much as, or your shoulders as much as you can. Squeezing the knees into the arms back out into the knees, lifting maybe one foot at a time, maybe both at the same time. Bring your big toes together, and then pushing the floor away, lifting up, lifting your shins up to come parallel, and eventually working towards straight arms, which I can't do right now because I'm a little bit tired, but that's your crow pose tutorial for today. So practice that lots, especially those strengthening poses, and if you didn't get up today, keep at it, maybe once a week, twice a week, 3 times a week, and pretty soon you'll be doing crow like a pro. I hope that helps. Hope you found it some new tips in there, and practice lots. Write a comment below, and eventually meet me for the intermediate crow tutorial practice tips playtime. Okay, namaste.